There we go. All right, recording in progress. The lady said we can start. So yeah, thanks again, everybody. If you didn't hear my spiel before, this is the Monterey Audubon Point Pinos Seawatch kind of informational session, somewhat informal, and I'll be happy to take questions in the chat, throughout or at the end, perhaps. I'll just open the floor to questions. But my name's Amanda Priest, so I work for the Monterey Audubon Society. I'm called the Environmental Advocate, which is kind of just a catch-all term. I do quite a bit of various things for the organization. So we're a local Audubon chapter. And so yeah, this will be all about our Point Pinos Seawatch program tonight. And so, what is that exactly? What is the Seawatch? This whole program, basically what we do is we pay a professional seabird counter. And this is a really niche field. There's only probably a dozen or so people in the country that we can invite to do this, because it's really, really unique and a really, kind of difficult skill set, as you will see with some of the footage that I'm going to share of birding out at the point. And I need to change my settings a little bit. Sorry, I'm kind of messing with my screen here. And why can't I see everybody? Oh, dang. Basically, if anybody, make sure you're muted, please. I was going to try to mute you myself, but just make sure you're muted so I don't have to hear any TVs or people eating some dinner. Anyways, so our professional seabird biologists, we have somebody hired, and what we basically ask them to do is be, stationed out at Point Pinos, which is there in Pacific Grove, kind of the tip of the Monterey Peninsula. And they're there from dawn to dusk, basically, about 11 hours a day, starting early November, gets down to about 10 hours a day as the days get shorter, because it's November 1st to December 15th. And they count pretty much every bird that goes by. That's their goal. Count everything that's there. And to the average human being, this might seem like a silly idea or a crazy idea. But I'm going to explain to you why this is, in fact, an awesome idea. So why monitor seabirds? What's the deal? Seabirds are very strong indicators of the health of the marine ecosystem. And, not just humans, but obviously a huge suite of other animals live out there in the ocean. And so they can kind of, because they're top consumers in that food web, they, monitoring them kind of gives us a chance to see biological effects of changes in physical parameters in the ocean, like changes in temperature or salinity and things like that. Unfortunately, seabirds as a group are very imperiled and really in decline. About, worldwide, the populations have declined 70% since the 1950s. So a very, population at risk, all of them basically. And about half of the remaining species are threatened or near threatened from human-induced causes, such as climate-related changes to prey resources and weather, fisheries bycatch and overfishing of the food itself, the prey items that they eat, loss of breeding, roosting, or foraging habitat, pollution and debris in the ocean, energy development, and invasive species at nesting sites is a big one. So they're at sea for most of their lives, and so they're indicators of long-term and large-scale changes in the marine ecosystem, kind of as I mentioned. So they're really kind of at the cutting edge, showing what potential threats are out there. And monitoring seabirds is important because you're collecting data to help determine migratory pathways for these species and kind of getting some baseline population information. And, our location, we get to educate the public about seabirds when we're standing out on the coast all day, talk about seabirds, seabird conservation, other marine conservation issues. And here in California, we're going to have 2 offshore wind energy development projects that are, basically going out for bids already for development. So we definitely need to be capturing some baseline information on these seabirds. So this is a graph that shows the downward trend since 1950 of a proportion of monitored seabird populations. And so, but another thing that's fun with Seawatch is it's really fun and educational. So this was just last week, it was after a really fun windy day and they had a lot of crazy species. and I got out there, and there's still a couple diehards out there looking out to sea with their spotting scopes and some big cameras too. Another great thing about this is you're not going to get seasick. You're going to have the opportunity to see amazing seabirds, a lot of these, open ocean or pelagic birds. We'll say pelagic a lot. That just means open ocean. Usually if you want to see an albatross, you got to go way offshore. You got to pay to go on a boat, smell the diesel fumes, take Dramamine and pass out like this poor kid. And then, maybe you'll see an albatross. But you can do that at Point Pinos. It's really, really special. And, there's some other, here's laced albatross, the bird. I still haven't seen one, but albatrosses from shore is a pretty amazing phenomenon. And there are some other famous Seawatch locations, like on the East Coast, there's Avalon Seawatch, which is run by New Jersey Audubon Society, and that's in Cape May. And apparently everybody on the East Coast, like southeast winds, we're often looking for northwest winds here on the Pacific coast. Also Newfoundland and Labrador, and even Long Island can have some pretty good Seawatch. And then even if you count the Great Lakes as a sea or open ocean, they kind of count too. And there's a really famous, essentially a Seawatch count, a really big sea duck or waterfowl and loon kind of migratory count spot called Whitefish Point Observatory. And this year for 2022, our seabird counter is a woman named Allison Belog, and she was just at Whitefish this last fall, I think, counting loons there. So that's really exciting that we're going to have her coming out to the ocean, a lot saltier than the Great Lakes. But yeah, as far as I know, we're pretty much the only Seawatch location on the West Coast that's regularly surveyed, both by us, by the Audubon Society in this organized survey effort, but also there's loads of really good, like seabirders, I guess we'll call them, the folks who like to stand out here on stormy days and spot those pelagic bird species. So they're out there a lot of the time and counting these species, which is really special. But geography really matters. So all these locations kind of have these reoccurring features, which is a piece of land basically sticking out into the ocean. And the further you're sticking out into the sea, the better for Seawatch. And so, yeah, the Monterey Peninsula is like that. And Point Pinos is right here on the tip of the Monterey Peninsula here in Pacific Grove. And so the geography really helps us out. And then, so this is kind of the bird's eye view. This is from an airplane, obviously. Well, a lot of these seabirds, when they're migrating south, they keep the land on their left, and they're flying down the coastline. I might go back to that this picture again. They're flying down the coastline because they want to get down to Mexico or wherever, and they're hugging the land because they keep the land on their left. I just need to go south. That's pretty straightforward, no complicated directions. But they get right about here in this little crook in the bay, and that's what you see at this point. And a lot of seabirds, loons and the sea ducks, and all those pelagic birds, of course, they really don't like to fly over land. So they see this peninsula and they're like, oh, no, I don't think so. And they go, they throw on the brakes and they turn around this corner real sharp and real close. And that's right here at Point Pinos. So they're coming down, but then they don't want to go over land, but they do need to go south. So they have to really sharply cut around that corner, and then they can keep going south again. So that's what we get to be positioned right there and see those birds really close up. And so, yeah, this is fun to see because you can see, they just want to get over to the air. They just want to get over towards, Point Lobos over there. They don't want to go over land. Most of them. Common loons can go over land, double-crested cormorants, some of the more land-based birds. We'll talk a little bit more about what makes a seabird a seabird. But anyways, this is kind of the view they have as they go down south. And there's kind of these flight paths, these flight lines that Allison will be looking at and following. So again, this was a quick sketch I got from Blake, our Audubon president, Blake Matheson. He's kind of in charge of Seawatch this year. He had this drawn up showing the flight lines. This is that one I was describing where they have to hug really tight around the peninsula here. But you'll get some ones where they're a little bit offshore, just going straight south. There's just some other kind of historic, flight lines the birds might be flying that you need to keep your eye on. Not you maybe, but Allison will. So what are they seeing? Allison will be looking out, our classic seabirders out there on a stormy day. They're seeing, this is through my spotting scope. So this was a stormy day last year. I think it was during the 2021 Seawatch. And if you watch the horizons, this is the red buoy offshore. Whee, there goes a bird. And then there's two little white dots. Those are common murres. And so here on this next footage, it's slowed down a bit. So again, the buoy is really good for orienting, it's left of the buoy, it's right of the buoy, whatever this bird is, the speck on the horizon, which is often what the seabirders are looking at. But if we watch closely here in a sec, there's going to be this bird that's going to zoom up over the horizon. And this is here he goes, wee, black-footed albatross. That's crazy. That was a special day. And there go the common murres again, these two little white specks. And I think a cormorant zooms by going the other way. But that's kind of the classic view through the scope. This is a view, this is some footage from Brian Sullivan. He's kind of one of our premier seabird guys out here, and he just has a really big camera lens, and he was filming. This was a stormy day in May this year, so it's a lot more of the shearwaters and other birds that we see in the summertime than we'll see in the fall, but just shows kind of just the chaos out there, all the stormy seas, the waves, and then the specks of birds going past. Watching the Seawatch and watching pelagic birds can be pretty tough. It's some of the hardest bird watching you can participate in. This is a flock of surf scoters going past. This is a good view. These birds sometimes will be pretty close to shore or even flying overhead. And so these are one of the main sea ducks. They're a marine duck species that we like to monitor, and they're one of the bigger, groups that we see coming by. And I've got some more cool pictures of these guys because, looking at them, you're just like, oh, it's all surf scoters, but you kind of pick through and you'll start finding different rare ducks that are hiding in there. But we'll go through some pictures of some of the other seabirds you might expect to see out there. These will not probably be the views that we have from Point Pinos looking out at the ocean. These are pictures, again, from Blake, probably from a pelagic boat trip. But yeah, black-footed albatrosses are pretty common offshore. This is the group of birds called the tube noses. And so fork-tailed storm petrels are in the same family. They have tubular nostrils on the top of their beak, and they're truly, pelagic birds. And these storm petrels are very small. They're almost the size of like a swallow. You could hold them in your hand. Albatrosses are very, very big. You could not hold them in one hand. You'd have to hold them in a big hug. But these are the smaller birds far offshore, unless you have a good northwest wind blowing them up close. And then there's all sorts of different birds whose names, well, shearwater, storm petrel, names that aren't really familiar to us because we don't live out on the ocean. We know chickadees and we know sparrows. They're in our backyards. Parasitic jaeger, that's another awesome bird out there. There's parasitic jaeger, Pomeranian jaeger. There's another one too. I already forgot the third name, but so that's another bird that's out there. This is another view of a surf scoter flock going by, but this one's kind of fun. So it's like, closer in, you get to see, there's males and there's females, okay, so we can distinguish the plumage. But then you enhance a little bit further, and this is where the cameras come in handy for those professionals who are out there watching. You zoom in and you find there's this funny looking guy in the mix. This bird here in the middle is a black scoter. That's a different scoter species. It's the rarer one of the three that we can see around here: black, white-winged, or surf scoter. All these species, you don't have to memorize them. This is just kind of giving you an example of what's out there that folks are looking at. But yeah, this is kind of one of those fun little, these big flocks are amazing to see come by, but having the rare bird in the mix is always a fun surprise. This is one of the most common birds, not a duck, not a tube nose. They're in the family called the alcids, or the diving birds, same family as puffins. These are common murres, and they look kind of like penguins. You often see them, washed ashore in the winter if they've been oiled or injured in some way. And pretty common birds to show up in wildlife rehab around here, and they 100% look like penguins, but they can fly. So penguins can't do that. So this is a flock going past the point. Whoops, wrong way. And this is what they look like up close. So yeah, most of the time the views are like this, though, little kind of specks and shapes on the horizon going past. And the folks who are distinguishing between all these different species, they're looking at, the coloration, which is generally gray or black or white, but in different patterns, how rapidly they're flapping, how high off the water are they flying? Are they in a big group, or is it one? Is he soaring, or is it just flapping nonstop? All sorts of different little techniques that, are really hard to pick up on after that. And the more time you spend out there, though, the more you learn. Here's a tufted puffin. These are often actually seen from the point. I don't know about that often, but there was like 8 seen in one day just a few weeks back, I think. And so here's our loons that go by. Common loons, the biggest one. Pacific loon and red-throated loon, I think, are about the same size, but Pacific is the most common species that we count going past the point. And they're really long, long neck and long legs sticking out the back, and they have to flap pretty rapidly as they fly by. And also, fun highlights are always like the rarities that show up, like a masked booby one year and a brown booby. These are birds that definitely are, equatorial, Galapagos, somewhere south, but they'll creep up here if the ocean temperatures are warmer. So again, that's kind of the presence of certain seabird species indicating what's going on with the ocean conditions. And then there's also a lot of kind of coastal species, birds that we might, as landlubbers think of as seabirds. I go to the seaside and I see whimbrels and I see oyster catchers and pelicans and stuff, but those are more like coastal birds or shore birds. They're not out on the open ocean. They're not really true seabirds, but we count them at the Seawatch site. And of course, the oyster catchers make themselves known. Always a good species to talk about. Most of us will have a lot of good stories related to the oyster catchers. Also some fun big groups of geese that might go by. This is a flock of Aleutian cackling geese with a couple greater white-fronted geese mixed in. And there's a couple little flocks of these around right now, I think, in the Crespi Pond Golf Course or Lake El Estero, any of the nice city parks that have nice big grassy fields. Keep an eye out for the cackling geese, which are like miniature Canadian geese, Canada goose. And then the greater white-fronted geese have big orange beaks and orange legs. So you can kind of pick them out of the group. Orange feet, orange beak versus the cackling goose, which looks kind of like your classic Canada goose plumage here. But yeah, sometimes you get big flocks of these going by. And then of course our gulls. The gulls will be ever present, although in the winter we'll get a lot more diversity of species. It won't just be our western gulls, our Heermann's gulls, and our Californias, which are kind of our standard summer birds, summer gulls. We have a lot of different species in there: glaucous-winged gull, hearing gull, glaucous gull, all sorts of different ones could be in the mix. So those will be counted as well. So then how are our biologists collecting this data? That's another question. Collecting the data and actually inputting it is through eBird. And so some of you might be familiar with that. If you go out on bird walks and you like to keep track of what you're seeing, it's kind of a community science database where anybody really can submit observations of the birds they're seeing. But our seabird biologists, they're collecting the data in an hourly checklist. So every hour they have to submit a new checklist to eBird. The counts start at dawn, pretty much when there's enough light to see that red buoy offshore. It's kind of bouncing up and down in the water depending on the ocean conditions, and goes until dusk when you can't reliably identify species anymore. And so the day length is like 11 hours at the start of the season, and then 10 hours of observations towards the mid-December part of the count. And so that's basically all birds that are determined to be new for the hour are counted, regardless of which direction they're going, or if you think they're just a local bird. They just try to capture everything they're seeing in that hour, basically. So that also includes birds that fly overhead, or if they hear geese and they look back and they're flying over the golf course. And like I said, some of the common loons, double-crested cormorants, they can fly overland, so they might be going overhead. So the counters are kind of trying to count everything while staying stationary at that Seawatch location. And also some days, if it's a really stormy day or just anticipated that there'll be a lot of birds coming by, there might be some additional observers helping out. Some of the other kind of pro seabird folks, Brian Sullivan or Don Roberson or Blake Matheson or Bill Hubick or Mark Kudrov, lots of amazing seabird folks out there. And whenever there's a lull in the, members of the public coming up to talk, it's always good to ask them what they're seeing. How are they identifying, these three different loons that look the same? They're all really happy to share. And so then how are we going to help them? Because, I don't have that skill set to count, thousands and thousands of birds going by, but we can help them by kind of, I don't want to say running interference, because, sometimes they like to talk to the public too. But if Allison, for instance, who is our fall seabird counter, if she's trying to count, these huge flocks of birds going overhead, and someone walks up and says, "Oh, are you looking at whales?" she can't be bothered to stop and explain that, oh no, I'm looking at seabirds and this is part of this big program. She needs to be counting. They'll have clickers and they're clicking away, click, click, click. And so that'll be kind of our job if we spend time out there on the coast as a volunteer, just talking to the public, kind of like what most of us already do informally or formally with either, Baynet, PG Museum, or the Bloy Project. Just talking to folks about MPAs or, the oyster catchers, your favorite sea creature you like to talk about. And then you can relay all the information I'm telling you, of course, about the Seawatch program itself. And yeah, so like I was saying, it's not uncommon to have like 60 to 80,000 birds in a day. And Allison has to count all those birds. So it's really, helpful when we can talk to, the really green tourists who are just like, yeah, where's the whales? Like, where can I go see sea otters? The classic questions. But even some of the nice, the locals who walk every day on the coast, they'll want to get some updates on what's being seen and things like that. So that's generally the best way to be helpful. And just sharing your love of the coastline and the ocean is always a good thing. And so there'll be also a bin with some resources in there for you. So there's this really great book called Offshore Sea Life ID Guide. It's actually written by Brian Solomon. It's a really thin little book. It's really great. I put my copy of it in the bin this year. We've got a Sibley Birds of the West field guide. It's got a bunch of good bird pictures. Some of them are bookmarked for our seabirds. We also have a really nice big laminated graphics, of loons and murres, and a big picture of Monterey Bay, so you can kind of explain that the shape of the bay and why Point Pinos is so special. What I did tonight, basically, you just do that with your little picture there on the coast. So that will all be in the bin. That's available for the volunteers to pick up and utilize. And the tricky thing though with this year is that Allison is going to be commuting to and from Point Pinos on a bike. And so she can't be carrying that bin back and forth. So that's going to be a change for this year and might require a little bit more chatting and coordinating and communicating between, the volunteers and me, the volunteers and the other volunteers, because we'll have to pick up the bin and then someone's got to take it back at the end of the day. If there's not someone, at the station when you're going to be leaving and, you don't know if anybody else is coming, we might just have to take it back to the museum, which is where it's stored right now. And we can go over that a little bit more and hopefully have a better system as the season progresses, because in previous years, there was always a car that you just stuck it in that. But this is good. I think we'll get it figured out. And there's also a clipboard with paper in it, so you can keep track of, how many folks you might have interacted with and talked about. And there's, our Audubon brochures and a little brochure about the Point Pinos Seawatch effort itself. So feel free to hand out all that information. And again, you can promote Baynet, promote the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. A lot of people just want to know, where should I go for lunch? What's a recommendation for dinner? Just the usual, nice, chit chat with people on the coast, or, some of the friendly, you actually can't have your dog off leash here. If you want to broach that, you always can do that too. But if any of that material is missing in the bin or we've run out of brochures, you can always email me. Blake Matheson's kind of in charge of the monitoring and the Seawatch program itself, but I've got all the outreach material at my home. So I'll be the one who can get that to you or get it into the bin and refill it. Another good resource for you, and this is even if you're not going out to the coast, but just for fun, you can always check on eBird, which you can look at on your phone, but also it's easier, I think, sometimes on your computer to explore the information and explore the data. And so Point Pinos Seawatch only is the hotspot, the birding hotspot for the Seawatch program, because there's also a Point Pinos general area, and that's if you're walking all around the golf courses and stuff, and that might have some really different birds than what you see if you're just facing, northwest out onto the ocean. So bookmarking this or checking in periodically to see what's being seen out there. And then the pictures and the footage you can see here on the right side, people upload some really great footage and pictures to review. So I'm like kind of an eBird junkie now, and that's a good resource for learning a bit more about what's going on out there. But yeah, make sure you dress warm out there. Again, this is all stuff you guys know, being coastal docents or volunteers in different capacities, but dress warm, but be ready if it gets sunny. I've gotten sunburned out there before too. Hot drinks help if it's cold. And, you know, if you've got binoculars or a spotting scope, certainly bring it, and you can join in the sea watching itself. And there's not really any specific scheduling either. It's pretty informal volunteering. The museum's volunteer portal probably will have a component that you can, you know, schedule time or put it in to keep track of your hours if you're a PG Museum docent. But for most of us, it's probably just show up when you want to, which it's most busy on the weekends or if it's really nice weather in the afternoon. And that's when Allison would probably most appreciate having a volunteer to engage with the public or kind of run interface with the public there. But certainly feel free to email me or reach out if you have any questions about the program, or you just need more material, or you want me to hang out with you for a bit out there on the coast because you're like, I don't know what to say to people. I'd be happy to come out and help you with that too. I'll be out there a lot of the time as well once I get back from Idaho. I'm in Idaho right now visiting my parents, but I'll be out there pretty often once I get home. So hopefully I'll see you out there. But with that, I'll happily open it to questions. And and also if anybody has any fun stories or anecdotes or anything from previous years, I'm sure we'd all like to hear those to then share and enrich our spiel for the public. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute or chat. I haven't been looking at that this whole time. Let me see here. We should build her a hut. I know, Mary, you're absolutely right. We've been, especially with not having a car. Oh, it's going to be, we'll see how it goes this year. We might have to like rent her a car. I'll lend her my car or something. But anyways, yes. Oh, Natalie's here. PG Museum volunteers, let me know if you want me to put up shifts. Gotcha. Thank you, Natalie, for putting that in there in the chat. So yeah, if you're a PG Museum docent, you can let Natalie know if you want to work specific shifts or if you just want to record your own hours separately and then input them later, I guess. And then Gail has a question about, oh wait, is someone unmuting?
This is Gina, Amanda.
Hi,
I'm
Gina.
just wondering, hi, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, given the logistics, not potentially having the material there, whether we can have a small care package for each of the people that we intend to go with, a few of the pictures enlarged and maybe a few of the brochures.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, we can just keep with us. Mm-hmm. So we can just use those. I have my own bird book, that kind of stuff, but I don't have the larger pictures or the brochures if you have a specific one that you're referring to.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I could kind of put together little little like packets of kind of the because like when I lead bird walks, I have all these little laminated pictures I always bring out for here's how we tell the difference between these woodpeckers. So we could probably make something like that, like have a couple little packets together, and then I could get those to you either just out at the point when I get back or get them to the museum and people could pick them up. And then it'd be a lot more easy for people who are independent and maybe are going to walk there to the point and not go by the museum. That's a good idea. I'll see if I can't get those put together. So if anybody else wants to request a little packet of material, let me know. Yeah, Mary's right about having shifts that are good. It's good to have shifts because then there's not a lot of overlap at the same time, which is good, but it's just tricky to coordinate that between 3 distinct volunteer groups. So if your museum, you can always check the volunteer portal for the PG Museum. Oh yeah, hey there, Jim. Yes, my email is here on the page, montereyaudubon@gmail.com. You certainly could email me when you want to take a shift, and then if anybody lets me know, like, hey, I'm also going to take a shift, but it'll be really tricky. I don't think I have the capacity to kind of coordinate everybody, individually like that. That would be really, well, it depends how many people I guess we have volunteering, but yes, you certainly may email me. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Amanda, this is Natalie.
Hey, Natalie, how's it going?
Good. What if we made a sign-up genius that would just be one link that would be accessible to everybody?
Ooh.
could go across organizations. All Sea-Watch volunteers would be given that sign up genius with available shifts, and then could just, sign up as needed.
That sounds super helpful. I don't think I've ever used that. So I'm so glad you are here to throw out that idea, Natalie. So yeah, me and Natalie maybe we'll coordinate then and figure out how that works, and then email you all the link. And then is that something that people can log on with the same username or profile name, and then they can see who's signed up and things like that?
Well, yes.
That sounds like just what we need, actually.
Perfect.
Yeah, so we'll see if we can't get that figured out. That might help with scheduling. That's a good idea.
I'll send it to you, and then you can review, make changes, or what have you. And then
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks. You guys can tell we're clearly working through this in real time. Like I said, we didn't have the Seawatch was canceled in 2020. And then 2021, they had decided they didn't want a bunch of people congregating. So Liam was our counter that winter, and he was kind of incognito and just hanging out on a bench kind of by himself most of the time. Well, not by himself. There's still a lot of us locals who wanted to come and hang out there. But anyways, an attempt to keep people from crowding around. So this is the first year we're getting back to doing volunteers out on the coast, which I'm really excited for. And it was really fun when we were doing that all in the pre-COVID times. Yeah.
So Amanda, I have a question.
Yeah.
That I typed, but I'll repeat it. So they're counting birds that go north, birds that go south, and birds that are just sitting there, and they do that every hour. So a common question from people passing by is, how do you know you're not counting the same bird twice? Well, you definitely could be, but how do you explain the protocol and how those numbers are used and made sense of?
Yeah, well, it might be something along the lines of, that because it's done every hour, and then it's going to be, this is kind of answering Jim's question, it's going to be November 1st to December 15th. So like a month and a half of data, that the idea is that it kind of will all average out. And they do kind of know, like there'll always be, that one Heermann's gull hanging out on that, green bunker thing, or, that little group of Wimbrels, or the 6 oyster catchers, 6 or 8 pairs, or 8 individuals around Point Pinos. And I kind of know those are there, I think. And it certainly is up to the discretion of the counter, and each counter might be a little bit different as well, with like what their standard is as far as averaging things out for the hour. Yeah, that's not a quick answer at all, is it? But I guess you could just say, because of the duration and it's a long-term data project, things will average out, and we'll end up getting, the more data that you put into it, kind of the more robust that kind of a trend is.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a simple way.
Could you highlight, are there, and you did certainly show us some pictures, but the key target species of most interest to be counted?
Yeah, well, so yeah, that's everything's supposed to get counted, but if it's ever like, oh, I hear some little birds twittering nearby, but there's a huge flock of Pacific loons going by, the loons take the priority. So kind of the two of the main birds that we like to really keep a focus on is the Pacific loon and the surf scoter. And that's kind of because there's some of the biggest numbers coming through. And also now that we've done this for, this will be our 7th year, I guess. Those are also the ones that have the craziest fluctuations. The surf scoters will have some huge years and really low years, and same with the loons. So just trying to understand what's going on with those 2 species is kind of the priority ones. But and then the coastal birds, again, the cormorants going to and from their roost site every morning and evening. Those kind of, I don't want to say they're like, we know they're there, throwaway species. Not exactly, but it is often, it's those migrating seabirds, the scoters, the sea ducks. So that's surf scoter, black scoter, white-winged scoter, and then the loons, common loon, Pacific loon, red-throated, and then those offshore pelagic species. I'm not actually sure. I feel like those are kind of like just kind of the cool, fun species. I'm not sure how much, because they're not necessarily migratory. I think a lot of them are offshore year-round. I'm not sure if they're really considered like target species, but there's certainly targets for birders who are coming to this location to try to see things, because they're, it's a unique location to see these species from land. But as far as like analysis for data in the future. Pacific loon, surf scoter, the migrating seabirds are kind of those focal ones. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions or funny anecdotes? I think a lot of you guys being out on the coast all the time, those classic questions. Where's the closest bathroom? Are you looking at whales? Where can I see otters? We always try to keep on the smiley face while you're like, also birds are cool. Try to throw that in there and get them to look at the oyster catcher, or show them the pictures of the MERS. Look, it looks like a penguin, but it can fly and it's in the northern hemisphere. And I often use that kind of redirection sort of thing where they might be talking about otters, but I'll talk about how, they're a keystone species in a kelp forest, but there's also, cormorants. They dive through the kelp forest after fish. They have to chase fish while swimming. How cool is that? Kind of redirect and stick birds in there somehow to just make people notice them or educate them a little bit more about the birds. But I don't know. Anybody else have any kind of classic questions that we want to make sure to share with each other for preparation? Let me see. Oh yeah, the whiteboard. We do have a whiteboard in the bin. And so hopefully if that does get picked up and taken out to the coast, if I can dedicate like a full day out there, I would go pick up the bin, or if I'm going to be there for a good multiple hours, I'd swing by the museum first and pick up the bin and then go to the coast. That's something that, we can update throughout the season or get Allison to help us update it. So I actually don't know how to look at the cumulative numbers from the Seawatch. You can look on eBird for the total Point Pinos hotspot numbers. But yes, that's what we'll be hopefully adding to that, because that's a really good way to catch people's eye and they'll want to talk about it.
Amanda,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think about asking the golf course, the golf club store, if they had a place they could store the stuff? Because the museum is out of the way for me, certainly, because I can just walk down or ride my bike down the road. And, the museum's not open every day.
That's
and
true.
I know somebody's in there, but it's harder to reach people.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't know if there's a location closer that you could leave the stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. The golf course, what's that place called? The Point Pinos Grill. Those folks are pretty nice. They might have a little corner. The bin, I downsized it a little bit from the one we had. I think it's a little bit smaller than the one from 2019, but it doesn't take up a lot of space. Yeah, maybe I could ask them. That would be, the closer we can get it to Point Pinos, the better probably for people. It's a good idea. And then Della wrote in there, I thought it was November 1st to December 15th. It is. I don't know if I misspoke in the last 30 minutes or I've been rambling, but yes, November 1st to December 15th is when the Point Pinos Seawatch occurs. So yes, it'll be going soon. And actually, I think Allison, our Seawatch counter, she's flying in from Michigan. I think she's coming from Michigan tomorrow. So that's exciting. Any other final questions or anything like that? I will do a little promo for November. Oh, I have to look on my calendar. It's going to be, it's during the Seawatch time, but we're going to do, I lead, I call them mindful bird walks once a month for Monterey Audubon. And they're kind of like, more like accessible kind of bird walks. We try to go places where folks who might need wheelchairs or walkers could easily get around. We don't go more than half a mile, traveling distance. And we're going to do a sit spot in November at Point Pinos and kind of do a Seawatch, sort of mini Seawatch kind of activity. I'll bring all the spotting scopes I have access to. And that should be fun. It's going to be November, I thought it was a Monday. Here it is. November 21st, mindful birding at Point Pinos. So Monday, November 21st, if you want to join in, you can certainly email me and get on that RSVP for that bird walk, because that should be fun. We'll just, hopefully it'll be good weather and we can just sit there on the coast. I'll ask people to bring their camp chairs and set up our scopes and talk about seabirds. and see what flies by. It'll definitely be very mindful, just sitting and watching the ocean, basically. Oh, Mary just suggested maybe someone can loan Allison a small trailer for her bike. That's a good idea. I actually know there's one at Asilomar. I should ask them. They don't use it, so I should ask them if we could borrow that. That's a cool idea. All right, any final thoughts or questions? Feel free to email, like I said, if you have any additional thoughts that come to you between now and the start of Seawatch. And yeah, I'm always available and really excited for the season to start. It's been a crazy year so far for rare birds, terrestrial birds, but also some of the sea watching this past month. Yeah, just in October has been really great, really off the hook. So fun stuff out there. And yeah, I hope I get to hang out with you guys out there on the coast, see some cool things. I'll go ahead and stop sharing and stop recording. And